At the Emperor's right hand sat Admiral Velox, young and ambitious, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of what was to come. He was renowned for his sharp mind, his daring tactics, and most importantly, his loyalty to the Empire's expansionist vision. Velox looked over at Emperor Zerdox, the powerful ruler draped in ornate armor, his expression a study in calm authority. They both shared the same conviction, that the Empire's destiny lay in conquering new worlds, in showing the galaxy the might of their unstoppable force. But today, a new presence interrupted the consensus. An older figure, with weathered scales dulled by years of service and countless battles, stood apart. General Yalgar, the Empire's most seasoned general, was not an easy sight to look upon. His eyes were hollowed from years of combat, his gait slowed by the weight of too many campaigns. Where others in the room saw war as glory, he saw only scars, and he wore them with quiet defiance. The Emperor's invitation had been reluctant but necessary, for Yalgar was a figure of legendary experience, one who had seen civilizations rise and fall, and in his time faced some of the most formidable enemies in the known universe. General Yalgar, Emperor Zerdox intoned, his voice resonating in the vastness of the chamber. We are gathered today to prepare for our greatest conquest yet. Our scouts have discovered an uncharted galaxy, rich in resources and ripe for the taking. The species there are diverse but primitive, ill-prepared to resist the power of our empire. Your insights are requested before we launch this campaign. Yalgar's gaze lifted, sweeping the room with a weariness that unsettled even the Emperor. He took in the expectant stares, felt the electric tension of their eagerness, and for a moment said nothing. His silence weighed heavily in the air. You all speak of glory, Yalgar said, his voice a gravelly contrast to the Emperor's polished tone. You look to this conquest as if it were a game to be won, a display of strength to be remembered in songs and legends. But war, he paused, eyes darkening. War is a different thing to those who've known it as I have. The Admiral, unable to hide his irritation, leaned forward. With respect, General, we've all known war. The Empire has been built on victory upon victory. We've crushed more species than history could ever remember. Yes, Yalgar replied, his voice low but unwavering. But there are species that resist differently, ones that, in their desperation, fight with a will you cannot anticipate. I've seen such a world. Long ago, when I was young and as certain as you, Admiral, I came upon a planet, a place known only as Earth. A ripple of curiosity moved through the assembly. Most had never heard of Earth, or if they had, it was dismissed as myth, a backwater among the stars, its stories twisted and exaggerated in forgotten tales. What could a forgotten planet offer us? Admiral Velox sneered, dismissing it with a wave of his hand. Surely a relic. Yalgar held his gaze steady. Earth is unlike any world you've known. Its people, they evolved on what we call a Deathworld, a place that seemed designed to destroy them at every turn. Their storms could shatter mountains. Their predators hunted even their strongest, and their diseases preyed on the weak without mercy. And yet, he continued, his voice hardening, they survived. They adapted. Their civilization grew in defiance of the very world that sought to end them. The room fell silent, the Empire's leaders straining to understand the weight in Yalgar's words. Even Emperor Zerdox seemed to lean forward, intrigued by the grim conviction of his old general's tale. Yalgar's gaze drifted as he recalled those long-ago battles. Their soldiers are not like any we've faced. They don't retreat when outnumbered. They don't surrender when beaten. They fight with a ferocity born from surviving against impossible odds. They've seen horrors that would break the strongest among you, and when faced with extinction, they learn to become as ruthless as the world that birthed them. The Emperor frowned, trying to brush away the creeping unease that Yalgar's words inspired. Do you suggest that this Earth poses a real threat to us? That these humans could withstand the might of the Empire? Perhaps not on the battlefield, Yalgar replied, but they will not go quietly. They will use every resource, every strategy, every ounce of their spirit to make us pay dearly for each step we take on their soil. I am not asking you to fear them, but to understand that they are a force that will test us like no other. Admiral Velox scoffed, unwilling to abandon his confidence. Your warnings are dramatic, General, but unnecessary. We've encountered resistance before. We crushed it. Yalgar turned, meeting Velox's gaze with eyes that held the weight of endless battles and unseen losses. Then may you be ready, Admiral, he said with quiet finality. For there is a difference between breaking the weak and facing those who refuse to break. The chamber was silent. Yalgar's words lingered in the minds of the council, a whisper of caution against their unified, determined will. The Emperor, troubled yet resolute, nodded slowly. We will consider your words, General, he said, signaling that the discussion was far from over. As Yalgar left the chamber, he could feel the weight of what lay ahead, his old scars seeming to burn anew. He knew he could not stop the Empire's lust for conquest, but he hoped, perhaps futilely, that they might approach it with eyes wide open. General Yalgar's words hung in the air, unsettling the members of the council. With each silent, watchful gaze fixed upon him, he knew he had their reluctant attention. He took a steady breath, recalling the bitter memories he had long tried to suppress, before speaking again. Earth is no ordinary world, he began. It is a crucible of endurance and violence, a planet that forges its inhabitants in fire and fury. Long ago, I was sent on a reconnaissance mission to that distant blue sphere. Our intelligence suggested a primitive civilization, one fractured by its own wars and strife. But I quickly learned that our reports barely scratched the surface of their resilience. Yalgar's gaze became distant, his mind traveling back to that haunting world. Earth's environment alone is relentless. Its gravity is crushing compared to the gentle pull of most habitable planets. Every day, the inhabitants are battered by storms of water and thunder that sweep away anything not firmly rooted. They endure scorching deserts, impenetrable jungles, freezing tundras. They survive on a world that, by all rights, should not welcome life. And yet life persists. It thrives. A hush fell over the council as they tried to imagine such a brutal landscape. Even the Emperor leaned forward, his intrigue deepening. But it's not only the land that makes Earth deadly, Yalgar continued. It is the inhabitants themselves, the humans, who have mastered its savagery and made it their own. His voice dropped, thick with remembered battles. They are not born fighters in the way our soldiers are bred. They are something more, a species tempered by unrelenting adversity, refined through unceasing conflict. The general paused, his gaze turning somber. When I first encountered a squad of their soldiers, I thought them ragged, crude. Their armor was scarred and dented. Their weapons seemed primitive by our standards. But as the fighting began, I saw their true nature. They were unyielding. It was as though they were each prepared to sacrifice everything to defend one another and their mission. I later learned that these were soldiers from a place called America, a land on Earth famous for its fierce fighters. One of them, the leader, went by the code name Demon, an apt name given his spirit. At the mention of Demon, the council stirred, intrigued by the general's unusual reverence for a human. Admiral Velox's brow furrowed as he leaned forward, skepticism evident on his face. This Demon, what made him so exceptional? Yalgar's eyes narrowed as he recalled his encounters with Demon. He was a man who fought as though every battle might be his last, yet never flinched. I watched him take impossible risks, calculated down to the second, diving into hails of gunfire to pull his men to safety. He and his comrades employed tactics born of desperation and perfected by necessity. They used every resource, every inch of their surroundings, every ounce of their resolve. Demon and his team could turn debris into barricades, fashion crude explosives from what little they had, and when all else failed, would fight hand-to-hand with nothing but sheer, unbreakable will. The room was silent. Even Velox's dismissive attitude had dimmed, replaced by a faint glimmer of understanding. Yalgar continued, his tone darkening. I soon realized that to them, war is not a distant spectacle or a means to conquest. It is part of their existence. They have fought for centuries, not against alien invaders, but against each other. Their history is one of ceaseless conflict, as if they were determined to perfect their ability to survive destruction, no matter the cost. He paused, letting the gravity of his words settle. Demon once told me something that has stayed with me ever since. We were caught in a particularly brutal firefight, one I was certain we wouldn't survive. But he looked at me amidst the chaos and said, "If I fall, another will take my place. We don't stop. We endure." Yalger's voice softened, the memory of those words resonating deeply. That is the core of humanity, an unyielding endurance, a refusal to be broken. Emperor Zerdox, thoughtful yet skeptical, spoke up. "And you believe this endurance is enough to make them a threat to the Empire?" Yalger nodded slowly, a solemn expression on his face. "Yes, because for them, survival itself is victory. We fight to expand, to conquer. They fight because, to them, the alternative is death, and death is not an option they accept lightly." The council murmured among themselves, the quiet hum of uncertainty filling the chamber. Yalger's tale painted a picture none of them had expected. A planet both hostile and beautiful. A people hardened by constant struggle yet bound by fierce loyalty to one another. He could see doubt flickering in the eyes of the Emperor and the younger officers, a seed of caution he hoped would take root. But Admiral Velox's expression remained defiant, his gaze cold and unyielding. "These humans sound fierce, yes, but they are nothing more than beasts backed into a corner. Our technology, our firepower, these will crush their resolve. I see no reason to fear creatures who have only learned to survive through desperation." Yalger sighed, recognizing the same arrogance he had once held before he saw Earth for himself. "Perhaps, Admiral, but I caution you. There are strengths that lie beyond numbers and weapons. The humans have survived because they are willing to do whatever it takes, to sacrifice everything. If we do not understand their tenacity, we may pay a cost higher than you imagine." Velox merely scoffed, unmoved. The Emperor's gaze, however, remained on Yalger, his expression troubled. As the meeting began to shift into a new debate on Earth's strategic value, Yalger allowed himself a small, grim smile. He had planted a seed, an inkling of the truth. Whether they heeded his warning or not, only time would tell. And deep in his bones, Yalger knew that if they underestimated the people of Earth, they would soon learn the hard way that survival on a death world was not a matter of luck. It was a matter of unyielding will. As General Yalger continued his story, the room seemed to shrink, the vast command center walls closing in on the council as they listened with a growing, unsettled fascination. Even Admiral Velox, who had resisted Yalger's warnings, was silent, his expression strained as the general recounted his experiences on Earth's battlefields. "It was not long after my first encounter with their soldiers that I truly witnessed the depths of humanity's resolve." Yalger began. Earth was embroiled in a brutal conflict, a global war with fronts spanning continents, fought with weapons both primitive and ingenious. I had joined with a squad led by Demon, the American soldier whose ferocity I've spoken of. We were deep in enemy territory, surrounded and outnumbered, with escape seeming like a distant dream. The general's voice dropped, carrying the weight of hard memories. Demon's squad was pinned down in a ruined city, a wasteland of shattered buildings, crumbling concrete, and smoke-choked air. Our enemies were closing in, a force far more advanced than any human weapon could hope to counter. In any other scenario, our retreat would have been assured. But Demon looked at his men and, with a resolve as cold as iron, ordered them to hold their ground. They were not just defending territory. They were defending each other, their homes, and a future that only they could see. Yalger paused, letting the image sink in. What followed was like nothing I had ever seen. Demon and his team fought with everything they had, and when they ran out of ammunition, they used their hands, their knives, anything they could turn into a weapon. They turned rubble into cover, fashioned barricades from debris, and used the very landscape against our enemies. With every inch they fought for, they taught me that Earth's people do not measure victory in conquest, but in endurance. The Council sat transfixed, trying to reconcile their image of a sophisticated empire with this ragged, improvised warfare. Admiral Velox leaned forward, a spark of intrigue in his eyes. So they fought well, but surely such desperation has its limits. Yalgar nodded, acknowledging Velox's question, but his gaze remained firm. Desperation, yes, but also something far more powerful. They fought as if they had nothing to lose, yet everything to gain. They would sacrifice themselves in an instant if it meant one more of their own would survive. It wasn't just Demon. Every member of his squad showed the same ruthless determination. I saw men who could barely stand hold their ground. I watched them fight through wounds that would cripple most soldiers. It was as if pain only fueled their defiance. The general's voice softened as he recalled a moment forever burned into his memory. At one point, Demon was hit, a wound to his leg that would have rendered most soldiers useless. I thought for sure he would fall back, but instead, he took up a position at the front, urging his team to keep pushing forward. Blood stained the ground beneath him, yet he moved with an energy that defied all logic. He looked at me, saw my disbelief, and gave me a grim smile. "Pain is just proof I'm still alive," he said. "And as long as I'm alive, I fight." The Council exchanged glances, the weight of Yalgar's words settling over them like a shroud. Emperor Zerdox's face was unreadable, but his eyes betrayed a hint of understanding, a dawning realization of the gravity of the general's experiences. Humanity's strength lies in their willingness to sacrifice, to endure beyond reason. Yalgar went on, his voice steady. Our enemies were relentless, yet Demon's squad held them back, inch by inch. We survived that day, but not because of superior technology or tactics. We survived because Demon and his men refused to surrender. To them, retreat was not an option. Their spirit, their loyalty to each other, was something I had never seen, something that the Empire's finest soldiers might not understand. Admiral Velox scoffed, though his voice held a touch less conviction than before. Loyalty and sacrifice are noble, General, but they are no match for power. A few soldiers fighting from desperation cannot hold a planet. Yalgar's gaze turned cold. You misunderstand, Admiral. This is not just about a few soldiers. It is the nature of their species. They are forged in a world that forces them to adapt, to survive against overwhelming odds. They fight not because they have superior weapons or numbers, but because they are compelled by a force we underestimate, their resilience. This is why I say they are a threat. It is not the strength of their armies alone. It is the strength of their will. Velox shifted uncomfortably, but he had no rebuttal. Yalgar's message had landed, however reluctantly. The general looked to the Emperor, hoping to impress upon him the lesson he had learned so many years ago. If we seek to conquer Earth, Yalgar said, his voice measured, we must understand that they will never simply yield. Their world has taught them to endure suffering that would break most species. And they will bring that suffering to our forces, dragging us into a war that will drain us, inch by inch, drop by drop. The people of Earth may appear fragile, but they possess a resilience that outlasts the strongest steel. They will fight us with a ferocity that we have not yet seen. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over the council. Emperor Zerdox remained still, his gaze penetrating, his mind working through the implications of Yalgar's story. Yalgar took a steadying breath, his scars seeming to pulse with renewed intensity, each one a testament to the hard lessons he had learned. He knew he had done all he could to prepare them, to warn them of what they would face should they seek to conquer Earth. But even as the council remained silent, Yalgar sensed that his words alone might not be enough to sway them. The council chamber was silent, the weight of Yalgar's words hanging thick in the air. Emperor Zerdox leaned back, his expression thoughtful, his eyes fixed on the old general with an intensity that betrayed a mind racing to process everything he had heard. Beside him, Admiral Velox sat rigid, his defiant posture wavering as the grim reality of Yalger's tale settled in. Yalger took a deep breath, steeling himself. This was his moment, the one chance he had to sway the Empire's course. He knew that words alone might not be enough to quell their ambition, but he had to try. "I have spent decades fighting for this Empire," he began, his voice resolute, carrying the weight of all the battles and sacrifices he had made. "I have led our forces into countless wars, claimed victory on 100 worlds, and witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations. But I tell you now, Emperor, Admiral, Council members, this path you wish to take is one that will lead only to ruin." Velox, unwilling to fully concede, scoffed. "Surely, General, even you must see the potential of this conquest. Earth is a single, isolated planet, their technology crude, their forces scattered. Why should the mighty Galactic Empire fear such a world?" Yalger's gaze hardened, his voice unwavering. "Fear is not the word, Admiral. Wisdom is. Earth is not a threat because of its numbers or technology. It is a threat because of what it teaches those who try to break it." He paused, his eyes moving over each member of the Council, locking onto their stares with an intensity that sent a chill through the room. "Humanity's resilience is not a trait we understand. They do not give up. They do not break. They endure, and they learn from every loss. They transform defeat into strength, turning their weakness into tools to fight back. I have seen it firsthand. If we underestimate them, we will learn this truth the hard way." The Emperor's gaze grew more contemplative, a hint of uncertainty in his otherwise unreadable expression. "Are you suggesting that we withdraw? That we abandon the chance to expand our empire?" Yalger took a step forward, his eyes locked onto the Emperor's, unflinching. "I am suggesting caution, my lord. I am suggesting that Earth is not like any other world we've conquered. Its people are not easily subdued. Even if we could defeat their forces, we would find ourselves mired in a battle that would stretch across generations, sapping our resources, breaking our spirits. Earth will fight us until there is nothing left to resist, and by then, we may have lost more than we stand to gain." The Council murmured, uncertain glances exchanged among them. Velox shifted uncomfortably, but his resolve had clearly softened, his once confident sneer replaced with a thoughtful frown. Emperor Zerdox leaned forward, his gaze fixed on Yalger. "And what would you have us do, General? You speak of caution, but caution alone will not expand the Empire." Yalger nodded, acknowledging the Emperor's words. "True, my lord. I am not asking that we turn away from our destiny. I am asking that we approach it with wisdom and respect for the unknown. Send emissaries, observe from afar, learn about their culture, their ways. Test their boundaries carefully before committing to an invasion. Let us not rush blindly into a war that could become a quagmire. If we study them, understand their strengths and weaknesses, we can find ways to approach them that do not require us to sacrifice countless lives." The Emperor considered this, his gaze distant, but his silence an invitation for Yalger to continue. "Humanity is a paradox, my lord." Yalger pressed on, his voice soft but powerful. "They are fragile, yet they survive against overwhelming odds. They are brutal, yet capable of unparalleled loyalty and unity. Their world has made them fierce, and their history has taught them to be relentless. If we engage them without understanding what drives them, we may find ourselves locked in a war that leaves us weaker, not stronger." For a long moment, no one spoke. The chamber was filled with the quiet hum of machinery, the distant echoes of footsteps in the corridors beyond. Yalger knew he had given them something they could not ignore, that he had cast a shadow over their plans with a truth they could not easily dismiss. At last, Emperor Zerdox raised a hand, silencing the Council. His gaze settled on Yalger, his expression inscrutable, a mix of respect and contemplation. "You have given us much to consider, General," he said, his voice measured, authoritative. "Your warnings will not be taken lightly." Yalger inclined his head, Recognizing the Emperor's words as the closest he would get to a concession, he knew he could not dissuade them entirely, but he had at least planted the seeds of caution, the whispers of doubt that might shape their decisions in the days to come. As he turned to leave, he caught Velox's eye, the young admiral's expression unreadable. Yalgar could see the battle of pride and reason within him, the reluctant acknowledgement of a wisdom he had yet to fully grasp. Velox's jaw was set, his shoulders squared, but there was a hint of understanding there, a glimmer of respect. Stepping out of the council chamber, Yalgar felt the weight of his duties settling over him anew. He knew the Empire's ambition could not be so easily quelled, and that humanity's fate, as well as his own, remained uncertain. But he had done what he could, offered them the only truth he possessed. As he walked away, the halls echoing softly with his footsteps, a thought lingered in his mind, one that was both a warning and a hope. The people of Earth had taught him many things, and if the Empire did not heed his words, they too would come to know the lessons of resilience, sacrifice, and endurance that only a world like Earth could teach. With a quiet determination, Yalgar resolved that, if the time came, he would stand once again on the front lines. He would face whatever destiny awaited, prepared to fight beside those whose spirit had left an indelible mark on his own. And in his heart, he knew that, if ever the Empire sought to break Earth, it would be Earth's unbreakable will that would become their ultimate lesson.